What is up, everybody? Welcome to Mindfully Mad, a podcast about mindfulness, mental health, and the messy magic of just being human. I'm your host, Michelle, and what if I told you your body already holds the blueprint to better mental health? The menstrual cycle is the most profound yet overlooked maps to women's mental well-being. Now, before you click away, stay with me. This episode is not just about periods, but about something much deeper. It is about understanding the natural rhythm of our cycles and how they can unlock emotional stability, mental clarity, and even self-love. It doesn't matter what gender you identify with or whether you bleed or not, this episode is genuinely for all. The concept is called cycle syncing, and it's the practice that is transforming how women live, work, love, and heal. And it's not new. In fact, it was introduced by functional nutritionist and hormone expert Elisa Vitti, and has been gaining more attention as women begin reclaiming ownership over their health. Now, Elisa Vitti has several books that I highly recommend people read, and this episode is kind of influenced by that book, as well as other papers that I have read about this topic. And we're also going to dive into people struggling with PMS, premenstrual syndrome, and also PMDD, which stands for premenstrual dysphoric disorder. If you are someone who struggles with the roller coaster that is your emotions, I see you because I am you. And I'm going to talk about how understanding my own cycle and syncing to it became my lifeline, and how it might help you too. We've been taught, either directly or through silence, that our hormones are something to dread. That being hormonal is synonymous with being irrational. That we should push through fatigue, mood swings, or brain fog like nothing's happening. But when in reality, so much is happening all at once. Elisa Vitti coined the term cycle syncing to describe a method of aligning your nutrition, movement, self-care, and productivity with the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle, which are menstrual, follicular, ovulatory, and luteal. In each phase, you can think of them as the seasons. So they're hormonal seasons that change the body and the mind. But why don't we talk about it, right? There's a lot of women who I've spoken to who've never heard of the term cycle syncing. Why don't we talk about this? Why is there also a huge gap between women in their understanding of their own cycles? Honestly, the answer is very simple. Cultural conditioning. Societal discomfort around female bodies has stifled these conversations for centuries. We've been conditioned to suppress, sanitize, or power through our natural rhythms. How many women listening to this right now have been told the phrase to just power through? And also, how many times have you said that to yourself, right? And there's actually a term for this. Vitti calls it hypersuck. And it's that feeling of being sucked into believing your body is unruly, scary, or even broken, as if there's something that needs to be fixed. And of course, social media doesn't help, because suddenly you're spiraling through self-doubt or comparing your lows to someone else's highs, and wondering if you're just too emotional to function. The amount of times that I was called sensitive, if I had a penny for every time I've been called sensitive, I might be able to fund my master's. And you see, our world is built around the male 24-hour hormonal cycle. So no wonder we feel like something is off, right? While men follow the 24-hour cycle of the sun, women follow the monthly phases of the moon. And suppressing our needs, it's costing us, especially when it comes to mental health. But there's hope, right? And research shows that when we learn to regulate emotions in tune with our cycles, we experience better control over anxiety, especially during the more challenging, like luteal phase, for example. Before I go on a tangent, because I know myself and I will, and also before I get into like personal stories, I want to touch on the science behind what's happening in the women's bodies. So the menstrual cycle is powered by 5 major hormones: estrogen, progesterone. These are the ones that we're, usually used to talking about. And then there's also follicle stimulating hormone, FSH, and luteinizing hormone, LH, and testosterone. Now, these hormones fluctuate across the 4 phases of your cycle. And these shifts don't just affect your fertility. They affect your brain chemistry, your emotional regulation, your energy, and even your thought patterns. So, the first phase of your cycle, the first day of your cycle, is actually your menstrual phase. Now, it's interesting because most people actually get this part wrong. They think when they start bleeding, it's nearing the end of their cycle, or they think the menstrual phase is the entire cycle. But actually, when you start bleeding, it's the first day of your 28-ish day cycle, which makes plenty of sense once you get into it, which I will explain soon. But during the menstrual phase, it usually lasts like between 5 to 7 days. For me, for example, I have the full 7 days. I was gifted with that. I was gifted the gift of the full cycle. And essentially, all the hormones that I mentioned, all the hormones drop to their lowest levels. Mentally, what is the mental impact of this? You're more low energy. It's a good time to be introspective. You'll notice more emotional release. But here's the magic. Your brain's left and right hemispheres communicate more deeply with one another. And so this is the time of intuitive clarity. In terms of physical energy, the best thing to do is to rest and recover. Some people suggest some light movement, but honestly, if the first 3 days of your cycle, you should not do anything because your body's already like working hard bleeding, right? So the first 3 days of your cycle, I would suggest not to do anything. And then maybe the 4th day, if you really want to, if you really feel the need to, you could do some like restorative yoga, but I would say that's like the limit. And then in terms of food, your body is going to want more warm, iron-rich meals and hydration as well. Like drink a lot of water. Soups, stews, and herbal teas, these are great. Now, after the menstrual phase, you have the follicular phase, which lasts about 7 to 10 days. Estrogen begins to rise here, and when estrogen rises, it boosts serotonin and dopamine, which, as we know, these are our mood and motivation hormones. So when these begin to boost, that's why we feel so much better once our period ends, right? And so you will feel more social, more creative, more optimistic. This is a great time for like brainstorming, starting new projects, and just trying new things because you have the energy and the mental clarity to do that. Your physical energy is high, so it's best to do like cardio or high intensity workouts. And you're going to notice that food-wise, your body is actually going to crave more light and fresh foods. So like think salads or lean proteins and like sprouted grains. Now, after the follicular phase, we enter the ovulatory phase, the HORNY phase. And this lasts like 3 to 4 days. Now, if you notice spotting during the ovulatory phase, don't panic. That's actually pretty normal. Some women do spot a little bit during this phase. I just wanted to like put that out there in case some women are listening to this and thinking, oh my God, I must be crazy. Like, why am I bleeding a little bit during this ovulation phase? I thought, like this is not normal. Actually, it is normal for some women. But during this phase, estrogen peaks, your LH surges to trigger ovulation, and testosterone spikes briefly. And so you're more confident, there's more mental clarity, and you have really good communication skills during this phase. So it's good for like interviews, deep conversations, and community connection. So I would suggest doing a lot of these like social interactions and these social gatherings during your follicular and ovulation phase, because you're not going to have the energy for this when you start bleeding. And your physical energy is still high, so you can continue doing those like high impact workouts because you'll honestly have more energy to do them. And in terms of food, they recommend like anti-inflammatory foods like berries, quinoa, and also some veggies like broccoli and cauliflower are great here as well. And this is to support liver detox of extra estrogen. Now, after the ovulatory phase, we get into the luteal phase. My favorite. Not really. I'll get into the reason why soon. But the luteal phase lasts between 10 to 14 days. Like, for example, for me, it's the full like 14 days. I'll get into that soon. But this is when progesterone takes the lead, which can have a calming effect if estrogen is balanced. Now, if there's an imbalance, which is typically the case, this is when PMS or even PMDD hits hard, like hits super hard. And this is when we feel more irritated, fatigue, sadness, and anxiety. Your physical energy begins to wane. And so if you want to support yourself mentally and physically, you can do yoga, maybe even Pilates, or just going on a nice walk through nature. That could also help. And food-wise, think warm, complex meals like root vegetables and slow-cooked grains. And also magnesium-rich foods like pumpkin seeds and spinach are great for this because they help reduce PMS symptoms. Now, this phase is also when you start having like a bunch of cravings. As I mentioned, progesterone levels rise during this phase, which is what stimulates appetite and increases those cravings, especially for high-calorie foods. This is a natural response to the body's need for extra energy as it prepares for a potential pregnancy. So there's a reason why your body craves comfort food and wants those extra calories. It's because you need it. Also, your basal metabolic rate, your BMR, which is the number of calories your body burns at rest, increases by about like 10 to 20%. And so this means your body needs more energy just to function normally. So basically what I'm trying to say is treat yourself to that delicious pasta dish you are craving because you deserve it. Now, like I said, this is also the phase where women with PMDD, which is a more severe form of PMS, experience heightened emotional distress. Now, PMDD affects roughly 5 to 10% of menstruating women. And the symptoms they're intense. They can range from depression, rage, panic attacks, and even suicidal thoughts. Now, research shows that women with PMDD have an abnormal response to normal hormonal changes, especially falling estrogen and progesterone. And the key isn't eliminating these hormones, but regulating how your body responds to them. And that's what cycle syncing supports. So essentially, people with severe PMS or PMDD, they can feel those like micro changes in their body, those fluctuations, and they affect you more, especially if like the estrogen isn't balanced. And when progesterone starts rising, it's like it clashes. And so again, cycle syncing helps regulate these fluctuations rather than eliminating them, because we don't want to eliminate your hormones. We just want to help you regulate them better so that you can cope with these fluctuations, because they're going to be there, right? And so it's a matter of like, how do we support ourselves to handle these fluctuations rather than eliminating them or suppressing them. So that's why cycle syncing is just so useful. It's such a useful tool because it helps us, it stops the suppression, because we don't need to suppress anymore, right? We're allowed to take space, and we're allowed to take the time to heal ourselves properly, So let's talk a little bit more about PMS and PMDD, because this is going to be like a pretty big segment, since it's one of the things that I struggle with and what prompted this entire episode to begin with. So while it is common to dismiss PMS as normal, intense mood swings or an unregulated system shouldn't be normalized. Studies like those by Manikanden et al., and I'll have all the sources linked down below. But this source has shown that emotional regulation during the luteal phase can significantly influence how women experience anxiety or mood disturbances. Now, women with better emotional regulation report fewer disruptions during the luteal phase. And this tells us something important. It's not just the hormone levels, it's how we respond to them. So cycle syncing helps by preparing you mentally and physically for these shifts, so you're not caught off guard. And I think that's the biggest thing, is when we have these fluctuations in our body, we're caught off guard and we don't know how to regulate ourselves back to, baseline. And for example, you'll be prepared to be able to nourish your body with like magnesium and B6 in the luteal phase, moving gently to lower cortisol and recognizing when your brain needs more rest and less stimulation. And I think that's a really big thing, is like when you overstimulate your system during the luteal phase, that's where a lot of those disturbances come through, and that's when it can feel very intense. And so here's the thing. If you struggle with PMDD, like I do, cycle syncing isn't a cure. I'm sorry, it's not. It's not going to be like, it's not going to go away. But that's also, again, that's not the point of cycle syncing. Like I said, it's not about suppressing it. It's not about eliminating it either. It's a tool, right? It's a tool. It's a grounding one, very grounding tool. And it's also one of the few holistic methods that centers around women's biology, rather than, again, like I've mentioned, trying to suppress it or medicate it out of existence. Now, when I use terms like that, when I say medicate it out of existence, I want to give a huge disclaimer, because I know that it's a very sensitive topic right now, discussing science and medicine and holistic care and whatnot, with our current president. I know that the scientific community is getting, they're getting a big fat bitch slap to the face from our current president, and it's not fair. And I think as, the spiritual or holistic community, I think it's important for us to stand up for our scientific community and to support them, because truthfully, holistic medicine doesn't stand a chance on its own. It doesn't. There's a lot of things that science has brought us that's very, very, very beneficial, and holistic care and holistic medicine doesn't stand alone. But that's not to say it's not important, because I know there's a couple of research that's coming out, and there's stuff that has existed for so long, and there are a lot of benefits to holistic care. And so what I'm trying to say is that it's a great addition to our current scientific Western medicine knowledge. I think that they can work together really well, because the holistic care can offer a alternative perspective, and alternative doesn't have to mean like it's replacing science, because that's not at all what I'm claiming. When I say alternative perspective, that just means in addition to the current Western perception, that, or not perception, but what am I trying to say? The current Western approach. And again, because of this whole ordeal with our current president and his very strong opinions about science at the moment, it's important for us to mention it, and which is why I am mentioning it right now as well, because when I say things like medicate it out of existence, I'm not trying to target that community at all. I know that a lot of women have tried Western approaches and it hasn't helped them. I know some women that have, and it's been great. It's been revolutionary. There's some women or men or just people who have taken antidepressants like SSRIs, antipsychotics, that have taken birth control, and it has helped them. It has truly, truly helped them, and that's so empowering, and that's amazing. But then I've also spoken to women where it's made them feel even crazier, and it hasn't helped them at all. And so I think we're just multifaceted beings. We're all very different, and we're all just affected. What am I trying to say? It just affects us differently. Medicine affects us differently, just like holistic care affects us differently. And also, just to point out, medication is important, but it's also not a cure. I mean, how many times have people said this about vaccination? Vaccination it's not a cure, but it's going to help you cope with the disease once you get it, right? It's a tool. And just like, vaccination is a tool, medicine is a tool, cycle syncing is a tool, all of these are tools that you can put in your toolbox to use when you are feeling low or sick or ill, right? And so if medicine works for you, that's fantastic. If it doesn't and you're looking for alternative ways to better yourself, that's also fantastic. And so I just wanted to give kind of that like major disclaimer, because again, when I say terms like that, I know that it can be very triggering right now, and that's not at all how I mean it. I just want to shed light to the fact that some people still struggle despite taking SSRIs or birth control, and they're like, well, the doctor said that it was going to help with relieving my symptoms, and it hasn't, and like, what do I do now? Because at the end of the day, it's not about hating on the medicine. It's the fact that the person wants to feel better. And how do we help this person feel better? Well, we offer them more tools that they can use to help themselves. And also, which this is going to be an entirely different episode, but there's also just the medicalization of women's suffering, right? We're capitalizing off of the suffering of humans. And it's not even about the science anymore. It's not even about the medicine anymore. It's about big pharmaceutical companies wanting to take advantage of our own sufferings. And so, again, this will be an entirely different episode because there's so much to unpack there. But just a tangent that I wanted to go down to give a better understanding of where I'm coming from. Yeah. Okay, tangent ending now. I could go on forever. Honestly, there could be an episode within an episode if I continue talking. I want to talk about my own experiences with cycle syncing and talk a little bit about my experience with PMDD as well. I haven't been diagnosed with PMDD professionally, like I haven't gone to a doctor about it. I think mostly just the fear of having it be official. If it's not official, it's not real. But I mean, I'm only lying to myself. It's also something, so PMDD is something that could be self-diagnosable. It's not, it is a severe form of PMS, but it's not the same as clinical depression. Well, even with clinical depression, you could still diagnose yourself as depressed if the symptoms are there, right? But for me, I think I started realizing that I have a more severe version of PMS when I first moved to Santa Barbara, which was 5 years ago now? Damn, has it already been 5 years? That's crazy. Yeah, I think it was when I moved to Santa Barbara. And I don't know if it's because I just didn't process that I had it before, or if it just developed or got worse over time. I honestly can't say. But I think the first memories I have of it is when I first moved here. And I think it's because I started noticing a pattern within myself. And I journal every night, actually every morning, sometimes during the night, but every morning I journal. I think more so now it's been every night, but when I first had moved here, it was every morning. And so I noticed that there was a pattern with my journal entries. couple of weeks, like 2 weeks before my period, I would start feeling very uncomfortable, like extremely sad, extremely depressed, feeling extreme hopelessness, all these emotions and these feelings, but on the extreme, right? And then I would flip forward and then I'll see, oh, my period started. And I'm like, okay, interesting. And then a couple of pages after, I, wrote about my period ending and how I feel so much better and full of life. And I noticed this pattern, month after month after month. And I started thinking to myself, there's got to be something with this. Like, why does this keep happening? Why is it that there are times when I feel so hopeless and so... Oh, 1 minute. That was funny. I'm keeping that in there. That's hilarious. That was actually my birth control. So the irony that I'm recording this while that happened is, funny. I'm gonna talk a little bit about my birth control experience, actually, because it aligns with this topic. But just continuing on what I was saying, like, I started realizing these patterns and making these connections and trying to understand, like, why there was, when I would feel, why there was certain weeks out of the month where I would feel crazy. Like, literally, I thought I was crazy. There were some months that was easier than others. I noticed the months that I would take care of myself more. Obviously, I would have a better, I would have an easier time during my luteal phase. But the times when I wouldn't be on top of my own mental health, I noticed that my luteal phase was so much worse. And it almost felt like, it's hard to explain the feeling that it was. It's just, it just felt very dark and it felt very alone. And it felt like a constant cloud hanging over my head that I didn't know if it was going to go away or not. Because it just felt constant. It felt like, it just felt like it would never go away. And then my period would start and it would be as if, like, that weight just lifts all of a sudden. All the weight from my shoulders completely lifted. All of a sudden, I feel this immense calmness and just this, like, sense of, like, ease. And then it's like, aha, my period started. And it's just interesting how our bodies speak to us and how our bodies try to give us warning signs, letting us know that, letting us know what state it's in, and that's also why I know that it's not just PMS. It was a complete more severe version of that. And I also naturally went on YouTube and I found some people talking about their own experiences with PMDD, and I, could just relate to everything they were saying, and I could almost check all the boxes that comes with being or having the dysphoric disorder. And I just thought to myself, like, wow, if I go to a physician right now, they'd probably diagnose me with this. And at the time, I knew that I didn't want to treat this with birth control, which unfortunately, like, that, I think that is the only treatment. It's either through, like, SSRIs, and they would recommend you to take those antidepressants during your luteal phase, and then you get off them afterwards, and like you kind of play with it like that. And I think it would be the same situation with birth control. So those would be the solutions if you had gone to a doctor. And at the time, I knew that like I didn't want to be on birth control. I really didn't want to like alter my hormones that way. I also didn't want to be on antidepressants just for that 1 week, I don't know. It just didn't feel like it aligned with me, and I didn't want to do it. So I started finding alternative ways, and I came across cycle syncing and Elisa Vitti's book that I have read, and it's fantastic. I do recommend it for anybody who's interested. And I started following her recommendations and incorporating cycle syncing in my life. And I realized the reason why I was having these disturbances and why I felt so off was because I was pushing myself. I was pushing myself so much so that I was being completely ignorant to what my body needed. And instead of listening to my body, I kind of pushed those voices to the side because, we do live in this hustle culture. We are in a constant state of productivity, and if we're not productive, then we're deemed lazy or weak, right? So it's like there's this pressure from society to constantly get up and work and work and work. And so when I wasn't mindful of the fact that I needed to honor my inner compass, then that compass would just keep spinning and spinning and spinning, not knowing which way to go. And that's when I would feel overwhelmed, because I would be overwhelmed. I would be so incredibly overstimulated by just this constant hustle that once my period started, I would just be completely overwhelmed. So overwhelmed by life. And I wouldn't have room for anything else because I would put too much on my plate all at once. So once I started getting in the habit of cycle syncing, I recognized that during the 14 days before my period, I really just need to not overstimulate myself by doing too many things. And by putting my schedule up in a way where I do most of my rigorous work during the time during like follicular and ovulation, I get so much more done. And then during the time when I'm in my luteal, I'll save certain things that I know that I will excel better in during that phase, so that once my period starts, I can just rest. But it's basically like time blocking, but during that month of when to do what, when to do more rigorous work, when to rest. Like during my luteal phase, because I get very nitpicky and my perfectionism comes out, I know that that's the best time to actually clean, because I will be in a state of like, okay, let's go. It's going to be, I get in a good state of hustle where I get in like this cleaning mode. So then I know during that time is the best time to clean my room and really do like a deep clean. And during my period, I know that I'm not going to want to do that. during my ovulation and my follicular phase, I know that I'm going to have more creative energy, and I'm going to want to start, like other projects, or if I have a to-do list to do at work, I know that I could get 10 things done. Whereas if I was pushing myself during menstruation phase or during a luteal phase, maybe I'll just have the mental clarity for 2 things. But because I know that my mental clarity is heightened during my ovulation and follicular, I know that I can get like double the amount of work done. So it's basically about time blocking, to making sure that you can divide, your responsibilities during the month, depending on what state you'll be in. And the best way to kind of keep track of when you'll be where is by honestly just downloading like a period app. And that way it will help keep you organized, and it will track it for you when you'll be in each cycle, as long as you just log when your period starts and how many days your period typically is and how many days your cycle typically is, and it will do everything else for you. I use the app called Stardust, and it's freaking amazing. I think I've gotten more or less all my coworkers on it. If you are into like witchy, esoteric stuff, if that's your vibe, if you want to sync your like cycle up with the phases of the moon, then definitely try out Stardust. It's like a fun way to track your cycle. And no, this is not sponsored, but I wish it was. But the reason why I just love using an app to track my cycle is so that I have a visual representation of what's happening. And Stardust is amazing because it tells you when certain hormones peak and when certain hormones drop. And also it just looks very cute. It's very esoteric and like witchy, and it tells you what phase of the moon you're synced up with, and it's just a very wholesome app. And they also don't track you. So like there's certain other apps that I'm not going to mention, but apparently it tracks your cycle, like it tracks your data is what I'm trying to say. And has been linked to the government of some sort. So I'm not going to go too deep into it because I don't want this video to get flagged. But, yeah, Stardust doesn't track your data that same way. And so your data is encrypted and safe, and they're freaking amazing. And another cool thing is you can actually have your partner follow you on there, like, and they will, so you can add a partner is what I'm trying to say. And when you add your partner, they get notifications of like what to look out for. For example, like it'll be like, Michelle is gonna feel a little down today. Maybe you should maybe you should buy her a teddy bear and chocolate and tell her how much you love her, or something cute like that. So it'll give you, your partner notifications of the state of your cycle, which I think it's kind of cute. I kind of need to get my boyfriend on that. He's not on it yet, but I think it would be cute for him to get like notifications of where I am mentally, so that he can mentally prepare. But partner or no partner, I think just having an app where you don't have it's just easier to track something when it's out of your mind and on paper. And so having that app just helps a lot. I also have it as a widget on my phone, so I can actually see it, and it reminds me to log in my period. And I love that it syncs up to the phases of the moon, and it just makes me feel more connected with the universe, with myself, and just makes having periods kind of fun, not gonna lie. But yeah, and the app has also helped me just make me feel more sane when dealing with my PMDD. So yeah, the awareness and tracking it, those two have been a very important step in the cycle syncing process that's worked for me. Now, being rudely interrupted by my birth control earlier was actually a good thing, because it reminded me that I did want to talk about that today as well. You know how I said that I didn't want to be on birth control at the time, and it was just because I didn't want to be on it just for the sake of trying to help with my PMDD. I didn't want to alter my hormones for something like that, because I knew that I was resilient enough to just work through it and change my lifestyle to sync with my cycle. So that's why at the time I didn't want to do birth control. Now, there are other reasons why I have now decided to get on birth control. One of them obviously being to prevent pregnancy. But I also took this as a great opportunity to do it for my own personal research, I guess. I try to be a glass half full type of person. So I thought, if I'm going to be altering my hormones anyways, I might as well track it and see if I notice a difference in my dysphoric disorder. And funny enough, I have seen a difference, a positive difference actually. A part of me kind of hates to admit that, because I was so convinced that it wasn't going to be good. I thought I was going to have even worse symptoms, but I'm actually pleased to say that my symptoms were relieved, immensely. It almost kind of feels like it used to when I was younger, when I just was ignorant to it, or when it wasn't as severe, and I kind of forget that I'm on a cycle. Because when I wasn't on birth control and I had my regular menstrual cycles, I could physically and mentally feel that I was on a 28-day cycle, because I could feel every micro change that was happening in my body. I knew exactly what day my luteal phase would start just by feeling and being in tune with my body, and I knew exactly when my period had started, and so on and so forth. So now being on birth control, it's weird because I don't feel those micro changes in my body anymore. I can't feel those fluctuations. But I think it's also because those fluctuations aren't as severe as they used to be. And because they aren't, it's also in a way regulated my hormones, which is what my doctor said it would do, because I was telling her about my PMDD, about my symptoms, and she was agreeing with me that, yeah, it did sound like I had a more severe form of PMS. And she was saying that birth control can help regulate this. And so, yeah, my theory was right. But my hypothesis wasn't. I hypothesized that I would get worse symptoms, and that just wasn't the case. I was pleasantly surprised that it's been helping. And I've been taking it for the past 5 months, and yeah, it's actually relieved my symptoms immensely. And I still have PMS, I'll still have symptoms, they're just not as severe anymore. And it's crazy to me because this is coming from somebody who had extreme symptoms. There were some months out of the year where I thought I was truly going to lose my shit. But also, before getting on the birth control, I did do research on what type of birth control to be on. And because I also know that there are some women that get on birth control and the symptoms get worse. So, funny enough, I actually did try birth control once when I was in Sweden. And I think it was the combination pill. I didn't do it, I did it through a telehealth, I just kind of bullshitted my way through it so that I could get the birth control because I was desperate and I wanted to try it, essentially. And because everybody at my workplace was on it, and I just thought that, oh, like maybe I should be on it too. Yeah, no, I didn't have to be, but I got sucked into that. So I went through telehealth, kind of bullshitted my way through it, and just took whatever one that they recommended. And so it was the combination pill with estrogen, right? And progestin. So this time around, when I was doing research, trying to figure out, which one to do, I realized that the one that most people associated with having worse symptoms with was the one with estrogen. And people who can't take estrogen specifically, because there's already like an imbalance in their bodies, do the progestin only. So I already, before my appointment with my doctor, had kind of done my own research and thought to myself, okay, progestin only might be the way to go. So I go to my doctor, I talk to her, I tell her, okay, so these are my thoughts, these are my symptoms. And she said exactly, she came to the same conclusion that I did, essentially, that progestin only might be the way to go because my body might not accept the estrogen. And yeah, so I'm on the progestin only pill, and which is also why I set an alarm the same time every day, which is what you should do. With the progestin only pill, you have to be more on top of it because you only have a 3-hour window to fuck up. And so you just got to be on top of it and take it the same time every day. And so the alarm really helps with that. But yeah, the pill itself, like, I won't lie to you guys, it did help a lot with my PMDD symptoms, to the point that again, like I said, I forget that I'm on this 28-day cycle, which is crazy for me to say because, again, I reiterate, like, I used to be so aware of that cycle because I was dependent on knowing when my episodes would hit. And I don't think just because my symptoms aren't as severe as they used to be doesn't mean that I stopped cycle syncing. I think regardless of whether you have severe PMS or not, everybody should, like all women or just individuals who menstruate, should be following this cycle and should live in alignment with their cycle. But I know, here's the thing, our society is not designed with women's cycles in mind. Let's be real, like, most workplaces and school structures revolve around consistent output and productivity every day, right? Every day you should come with the same energy, same expectations. And this is, like I've said before, aligned with the male 24-hour cycle. But that's not how the female body works. Our biochemistry shifts every single week. So, like, again, why should your food, your work relationships, or just your relationships in general and your work in general, like, or even self-care, why should all of these components stay the same? They shouldn't. Like, if we could just imagine, if we could just dream away, like, imagine if women or just people who, in general, who menstruate had 3-day rest passes each month, which is perfect because, like I said before, the first 3 days of your menstrual cycle, you shouldn't be doing anything, like anything. But now imagine that you have a corporate 9-to-5 job where you have to be on top of your game every single day. It's exhausting, right? And also, imagine if schools taught cycle syncing in health classes, or if healthcare providers integrated this into mental health treatment. I just think there needs to be a call for change, and there needs to be more awareness of the fact that it is a 28-day cycle, and that there are other tools we can use if certain tools like birth control or SSRIs don't work for certain people, you know? And again, cycle syncing isn't just self-care, and it's definitely not an excuse to be lazy or unproductive, right? It's a way of integrating our menstrual cycle with our lives to honor those phases so that when we have the extra energy for productivity, we can truly be productive and then rest when we aren't, right? This holistic system allows collaboration with your body rather than conforming to this like cultural conditioning. So my invitation to you is this. Start tracking your cycle. Learn the seasons of your body and ask yourself, what do I need this week? And honor it. You don't have to do everything at once. Just begin with the awareness of your body, the awareness of the symptoms you're experiencing every day and every week, and start tracking it. I think that's a really great place to start. And you can do that by journaling. I think journaling is a great way to really see the patterns day after day and then week after week. And if you're struggling with PMS or PMDD, just know that you're not alone. You are not too sensitive. You are definitely not broken, okay? Your body is asking to be listened to, and you deserve a life that listens. All right. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. If any of this resonated with you, please share it with a friend, leave a review, or just reach out to me. I love hearing from you guys. And until next time, be kind to your body and stay mindfully mad.